Over the course of 4 years, where do you think interest rates will land? Back to where we were a few years ago?
The first thing that we have to look at is, why did interest rates get down to... Hey everybody, Chris Lamm. This is the Money Hole Podcast, episode 2 with my great friend, Fabiano Altamura. We're going to do a second segment about the housing market. We're going to talk a little bit about politics, which is kind of a no-go zone for most people, but I think it's really important right now. And dude, thank you very much for being here.
So listen, in the other episode that we did, we talked about topic of all topics right now. We're in a very, our country, to an extent, I feel we're on the brink of something. I don't know what it is. Hopefully it's something good rather than versus something bad.
Yeah.
But what I asked you last time, and you so rudely interrupted me and said it was going to be an episode 2, but I forgive you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You were great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this, right? Because this is, I think, what everybody wants to know. I want to know it as an investor. I want to know it is like, what way will it go? What will the housing market go if Trump gets in, or if Biden stays in, or if Biden doesn't stay in, the liberals stay in? What will the
You had to go there and say the word liberals, didn't you?
I don't know, dude.
You couldn't help yourself.
Well, what is it? Okay,
You just can't help
Democrats then. Okay, would it be better if I say libtards?
No, it would not be better if you said libtards. That would not be good at all. I think it's a really good question, because right now we have a lot of people that are sort of on the sidelines, and everyone's kind of waiting for some sort of a shoe to drop. And, recording this several months before the election, there was an attempted assassination, and who knows, by the time this recording gets put up, we could have a new Democratic president nominee. It may not be Biden. So I think it's really important. But what we're going to focus on is what would happen under the Democrats or the Republicans.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll keep it very simple. So the first thing we have to do is we have to go back to when Trump was in office in 2016. When Trump was elected in 2016, the stock market rallied, and it rallied the entire time, right? Because generally a Republican, and specifically Trump, he's very out in the open about deregulation, right? And when we look at our housing market right now, the biggest problem we have in housing is not interest rates. It's inventory, or homes available for people to buy, especially for the low to moderate income. Okay. And so the biggest challenge in, like, let's say California, is if a builder wants to build a property, the permits and the expense to build a property is so high because of regulation that they can barely do it and make a profit. And the risk for a developer to create a subdivision with a starting house price point like $300,000 or $400,000, it just doesn't make sense. The risk is too high. So we have, and that's true for most of the nation. So right now, if we were to have a Republican to get voted into office, specifically Trump, he has made it very clear that deregulation is something that he would be doing, and that would be good for housing, right?
And for anybody that might understand, when you mean deregulation, what do you mean by that?
That's a great question. So in California right now, if you were to go and build a property, the amount that you have to pay in permits for things like, the environment and, septic systems and solar and all these things that have just been added in the last decade, it adds an extra $100,000 to the price tag of building a home.
Good Lord.
That didn't exist 10 years ago. And so those are largely Democratic policies that have created the regulations to make housing so expensive. And so what Republicans, specifically Trump, would do, or what he says he wants to do, and what he did a little bit in his last term, is to lower the cost to build properties. That's called deregulation, to take away some of these requirements that are making the price tag on building a home so expensive. Well, if that were to happen, you would see more developers willing to take risk to go and build properties, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing under a Trump administration that we see and that he's talked about is lowering the cost of, all of the things like wood and metals and the things that cost money through tariffs and through basically taxing the other countries that are selling us our products to try to lower the costs of the things that we need to build properties in America. That would be one way he could help. Okay. The other thing that Trump has come out and said is that he's going to lower interest rates. He's going to tell our Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Now, I don't know if he can really do that because technically the Federal Reserve is an independent entity. In fact, our current Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, he's actually done a pretty good job. He's not liked by Biden. He's not liked by Trump. And he's truly acting as if he's not politically motivated. Now, could Trump use his office to put pressure on him to lower rates? Yeah, he probably could. There's ways that he can do that. And he's made it very clear he's going to lower rates. And so under a Trump administration, I think what we see is more closer to what we would call a free market than anything. Okay. And so it looks good for housing.
But if he doesn't have the power as president to necessarily do that, though, like when you look at if Trump, say, got in, let's just say he gets in November, over the course of 4 years, where do you think interest rates will land? Back to where we were a few years ago or not?
The first thing that we have to look at is why did interest rates get down to 2% in the first place, right? Because when Trump was in office, they were 4.5%, 5%, 5.5%, right? So what happened was we went into the pandemic right at the end of his presidency. And during that time, the financial markets went into complete chaos because they were concerned that people were going to lose jobs. Interest rates went up super fast. And right at the time he was exiting and Biden was entering, we had a Federal Reserve who stimulated our economy in a way that's never been done before by lowering interest rates to all-time low rates and pumping a ton of stimulus into the market. Now, at the time, that made a lot of people a lot of money, including me. People that had assets did really well during that time. And the low to moderate income got a lot of free money, and they got a lot of benefits to working from home and not paying their mortgage and not paying their rent and moratoriums on their mortgage and moratoriums on their student loans and stimulus checks in the bank. But what that did is it caused the greatest inflation we've had in 40 years. And now all those people would trade those days back any day to be able to afford groceries. And so what we have to learn from history is that there is no free lunch. Everything comes back to bite us, right? And so Trump did some good things, but the pandemic really put us in a position to be where we're at today. Inflation, expensive housing, all that stimulus flowed back into assets.
Right.
And out of the hands of the people that needed it the most. It's unfortunate, but that's what happens.
So he's going to basically try and get back to what he did in his first 4 years.
That's what he's saying.
Okay. So let's think of the other side. If it's not Biden, if it's a new Democratic nominee, what could happen if the Democrats get in again?
So let's go ahead and look at what Democrats have done in the past. Okay. So if we go back to Obama, when Obama got into office, he created a tax credit for $8,000 for first-time home buyers. I don't know if you remember that. But back then, we were coming out of the 2008 housing crisis, and it was a much different market than we have today. We had a lot more inventory for sale because there were a lot of foreclosures, and a lot of people had walked away from their homes, right? And so he was trying to stimulate home buying and get people to buy homes. So he gave a tax credit of $8,000 to a first-time buyer. He lowered interest rates. And he actually did a lot of things. I would say a lot of what we're experiencing today is partly due to what Obama did during his presidency. He really helped get the housing market that was crushed by, the housing market crash in 2008. He helped it come back to life. The other thing that Biden has talked about is really kind of doing some of those same things, lowering interest rates, creating incentives for first-time home buyers, artificially lowering rates, first-time buyer grants and bonds, and all kinds of free money and incentives. Now, I think that those things can be helpful. I really do. But what it doesn't do is address the inventory problem. And what we need to see is deregulation. Now, there are a few items in the most recent bill that he's proposed that would allow people to buy properties and to rehabilitate them with part of the mortgage. So he would basically incentivize the GSEs like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and Ginnie Mae to write mortgages where the average first-time buyer could buy a property that's in bad condition at a lower price and finance renovating that property. There's also part of the bill that says that they can build accessory dwelling units with the property to help them create income so that they can take advantage of the American dream and build more value and create equity and create income when they buy a house, which is really smart.
Yeah.
So there are some things that the Biden administration has put out there that I think could be helpful. But at the end of the day, whatever party gets in, they really need to address the inventory problem. They need to create affordable housing. And I don't see any other way for them to do that if they don't deregulate.
Right. But it doesn't look like Biden would do that.
Well, it doesn't look like Democrats would ever do that.
But like you also, so we talk about, inflation has gone up because there was so much stimulus pumped into the economy. So tell me this, where are the grants coming from? Where are these other incentives coming from? Like, who's creating that money? The only way to create extra money is to what? Increase taxes. So how are they going to get that money? Is that not just another form of pumping stimulus back into the market again?
That's a really good question. So some of the bonds and grants that are created for people to buy properties are truly, they are tax dollars. And I don't know about you, Fab, but I actually don't have a problem with that. My issue isn't necessarily helping the low to moderate income. My issue is where the government spends money in a lot of other places. And so, when the government goes out to create their budgets, whether it's the state or the Fed, they have to create programs and fund those programs where they think it's the most needed. And I think that's where you could really make your vote more. You could make your vote on that, because that's where the government spending is out of control. Our deficit is out of control. And so I think that if they are going to spend money on the budget, figuring out how to address the low to moderate income and getting them into housing, in my opinion, that's tax dollars well spent.
Well, I mean, it's also this as well. I mean, you just got to look at the data, right? I mean, listen, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat because I can't vote. I know where my...
Is that because you're a felon or something?
No, no, I'm here legally. I have my green card. I spent a lot of money in visas, bro. Listen, but if you look at our tax dollars, where have they gone? They went into leaving 85 billion in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
They've gone to different wars.
Exactly.
Right? If Trump was in, and again, I'm not saying that I can even vote for him. Vote for policy. Don't vote for the person you like or dislike.
And we're talking about policy.
And we're talking about policy.
Yeah.
I think under him, the tax dollars would be spent better because I think there'd be less wars.
Yeah. I can't disagree with you. I cannot disagree with you. I think that there were some mistakes Trump made.
Yeah.
But there's going to be mistakes on either side. I do think that there are solutions to our housing market. There are. And there are some on the Democratic side too. The Democratic side wants to see high density housing. And I'm a fan of high density housing. I'm a fan of it, because if you can go to a master plan in a city and figure out how to infill big yards by putting in accessory dwelling units and allowing people to create income and to create rentals, because we need rentals too. There's always a market for rental properties. Not everyone wants to buy a house. Some people want to rent because they're not going to live there forever. It's not their forever spot. I think that solves problems. That creates more rentals. That creates more income. That creates more jobs, more construction. That's a really big Democratic policy right now. They're trying to push for high density housing.
But can you do that without deregulation?
Well, they're actually creating the regulation to allow that to happen.
Okay.
But the problem we have is construction costs are still high. And that's where I think a Trump administration could really help.
And how do you lower those costs though?
Tariffs are a big part of that.
Yeah.
If they start taxing the materials that we're buying from other countries, that can lower the cost for us. If they lift regulation and allow us to go in log forests to lower the cost of lumber, that would help us. If they create more manufacturing in America, where things like metal can be created and we can manufacture that right here in the States, those are largely, hot buttons for Democrats because of environmental issues. So manufacturing and tariffs are where we could really help with lowering the cost to build properties. Getting rid of some of the permitting issues in states like California. I mean, people need to get solar, but they shouldn't have to require the builder to install it, because that's made it really hard. Some of our septic tanks and some of the electricity, policies that have gone into place for new builders, they've made building homes really expensive. The other thing is energy. Energy is super expensive right now. And PG&E here in California is the most expensive electricity in the nation. And if we would have managed our, the argument is, I don't know if this is true, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but, if we would have managed our forests well, if we would have held PG&E more accountable, we wouldn't see everyone paying for the lawsuits that they've had to pay for through their electric bill right now, because PG&E they have a monopoly, and it's incredibly expensive to pay PG&E right now. So those are all things that I think a Republican administration would probably help with.
That's one thing I do dislike about specifically where we live. In Europe, there isn't a monopoly. So you can change your utility provider whenever you want. Here, we have no option.
Well, you do now.
We do?
There is an option now, yeah. Yeah, there's
to not use PG&E?
So a lot of people don't know this, but in the 1950s, I believe, when they created our power grid, let's talk about California. They were estimating 20 million people in California. We have 40 million people in California now. And the power grid cannot be built. It would cost trillions of dollars. It would take 10 years. They would have to build nuclear power plants. It's impossible to build a new power grid. So they don't want to talk about it a lot.
Right.
But a lot of the motivation that's coming out of this environmental movement for clean energy is because our power grid is failing.
Wow.
It's literally failing. And so there's a company in California that's come out recently called the Powered Up Network. And we actually refer clients to it all the time, where they can actually get solar panels, Tesla battery walls installed on their property, no money out of pocket, no loan, no lease. They just have to pay a new utility company called the Powered Up Network. And it's usually half of what they pay PG&E, and they didn't pay anything out of pocket, no loan, no lease. If they sell their home, it goes right to the next buyer. And it's a brand new program. We literally have 40 of our clients right now who have been installed in Shasta County, and it's growing all over. Yeah, that's going to be the utility.
Are they off the grid? Is it like being off the grid or not?
Yeah, because you've got a Tesla battery wall, so you're storing all your own energy.
Dang, I wish I would have known about this.
I wish I would have. I got my solar panels in 2018.
Good
I paid
Lord.
$50,000 for it, and I got a $7,500 true-up bill from PG&E 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
because I don't have a Tesla battery wall. So the game changer for this is the new battery walls and how you can store your own energy, so that when it's non-peak time or it's nighttime and you have all your lights on, you're not borrowing from the grid. You're taking it from yourself because you stored it all day. So that is going to be a game changer that we're going to want to watch going forward. Is there's going to be a power grid that's going to be on the roof of America.
Wow, dude, that's exciting, man.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
But for people like us that spent $50,000,
we just have to buy the Tesla battery wall. And it's $18,000 a piece. Very expensive.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just part of the deal. But going back to, the original question, there's pros and cons naturally to both Biden and Trump, or Democrats and Republicans. And I think the root of our housing right now is we have to create more inventory. And we have to create more inventory specifically for low to moderate income families. And the only way for that to happen is for deregulation and a lower cost of construction.
So do you think as well, because, listen, I want everybody to be able to buy a house. Who doesn't, right? But for the investors, do you think that from our point of view, praise the Lord, we own our own homes, we have multiple properties. Do you think that will benefit investors as well if the Republicans got in rather than Democrats? Or is it the same across the board?
I think capitalism will always find a way. In fact, there was an Instagram video that just went out from Grant Cardone because Biden just proposed nationwide rent caps at 5%. Well, you and I are familiar with that. We live in California. Newsom already did it. And the video is really interesting. I'll put the link in the description. But Grant Cardone goes on this video and he's doing a green screen with the headline, Biden proposes. And he basically says, I own 15,000 rentals.
My goodness.
And he says, this is going to make me a billionaire. He said, it will raise my net worth. He does the math. It'll raise my net worth as a landlord by $4 billion in 5 years. And because he shows exactly how much he'll raise his rent. And here's why he said this. And he's telling the truth. It would be the best thing that happened to him. Because the average landlord that doesn't have rent caps doesn't necessarily raise their rent.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've got good tenants. And having good tenants, if you're a landlord, is more valuable than an extra $80 a month.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
because you don't have to deal with the drama of people nickel and diming you and evicting them and having to replace them all the time. Well, when we go into a situation where we have rent caps, we're now going to raise rents every single year, no matter what, because we won't be able to raise it to get it to market rents 5 years from now.
Right.
It forces you to raise rents, and everybody else raises rents too. So in California, when that happened, rents went up across the board statewide, and they've gone up ever since. The rents are higher today than they would have been because of that policy of rent caps.
So you think that's a good thing?
It's a good thing for the people that own properties. It's a good thing for investors, but it's a bad thing for renters.
Yeah. But I mean, listen, as you said, though, I'd rather listen, when you've got 15,000 rental units, I don't think you care, right? When you've got like 9 or 10, you want those tenants to be happy.
I think
right?
that he did care. I think Grant Cardone put this video out to make a point to the people that are voting that this looks like it's going to help you, but it's going to help us. And that's what I think the Democrats have done time and time again, is when they did the stimulus during the pandemic, all of that free money went right through the hands of the low to moderate income and back into the pockets of the wealthy.
Which I don't think that's good though, is it?
No, it's not good.
No, but
it's not good for people that care.
No, but if you know, the rent cap, obviously you said it makes people more money, but won't it also create more default in rental payments?
It'll spread the wealth gap more. It'll create more lower class and more upper class people. It's attacking the middle class. So, and that's the reason why I say this, is because people have to really take a look at what's been happening, and they have to just make sure that they buy assets.
Mm-hmm.
It's really simple. Stop buying things that go down in value. Get rid of debt.
Yep.
Take your money and buy things that go up in value.
Yeah.
Because you and I can't change who's going to be president and what they do, but we can look at history and we can make better decisions to take care of our family.
Yeah.
And that's really what I talk about when it comes to politics. I don't really care who you vote for. I care about the quality of your life. I care about your finances. I care about where you're heading. And if you just take some time and you look at truth and you look at history, then you can make better decisions, not about who you vote for as much as how to make decisions to best benefit your family, no matter who gets in office.
Yeah.
And that's really what I wanted to talk about.
That's awesome, bro. Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I love every time we get to hang out, I learn even more, man.
I do too, bro.
Thanks, bro.
I always learn from you. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you.
Yeah, you would.
I wouldn't be doing this.
You might not be doing it as well.
Well, and you have a podcast too, and it's not even close to in the lane of what I do, but it's really awesome.
Thanks,
it's called Story of Podcast. They just had a reel that did multiple millions.
Dude, it's so weird. Like, we had Carrie Lloyd in, and we would talk about Princess Diana. 2 reels hit like 3.5, 3.7 million. We went from like on YouTube, 450 subs to like nearly 9,000, 10,000 now, just from 2 reels.
Do you think that because we're talking about Princess Diana now, that more people are going to watch?
That's a good point, bro. Clickbait, baby.
We'll have to make sure we add that.
We will.
I don't know what it was, but you guys have done really well, and you guys have a lot of really famous actors on your podcast. And I mean, I always tell people I'm so privileged when I go to conferences and they ask me about my podcast. I have my buddies do it, and they're like, "Who are your buddies?" I'm like, "Oh man, my friend Fab was on Tomb Raider. He's produced the movie Unplanned, and they're connected with the Chosen, and Dave was on Jack Ryan, and they're like, which episodes? I tell them, like, oh, I remember that guy. I was like, those are my boys, man. They helped me put this all together. So you guys make me look good.
Oh, dude.
And for the record, I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you, dude. Thanks, bro. Thanks for having me again.
Well, hey, if you have any questions about anything we talked about, drop them in the comments. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.